Ms. Crowley, the true balance file, 42 names, the 6 minus million, the falsified reconciliations, the forged ad, it's all here, and you know it's all here.
I know exactly what's in as I built it.
Daphne Crowley kept 2 sets of books for years. One she filed with the state. The other she titled True_Balance. Federal agents found it on an unlocked desktop, updated 3 days before this arrest.
Because I've been carrying this for 4 years and I couldn't keep the numbers straight anymore.
Then let's get it on record, all of it.
She would not get the chance to explain. Within 72 hours, federal agents would seize her desktop computer, her brokerage records, and a single Excel file she had updated 3 days before her arrest. 42 families, $6.1 million. A trust account that held $4,200 against $3.1 million in liabilities. And a spreadsheet she titled, in her own handwriting on her own machine, true_balance.xlsx. She knew exactly what she owed. She knew exactly to whom. She just stopped paying. Before we go any further, I have to ask, have you ever signed a contract and handed over a check before you got the keys? Drop a comment and tell me how much you trusted the person on the other side of that table. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit subscribe right now. This channel covers the cases mainstream news quietly buries, and the next part of this story is worse than the hook. Daphne Lorraine Crowley was born in 1973 in Florence, South Carolina, the only daughter of a regional bank loan officer and a county tax assessor. Her father underwrote mortgages for a living. Her mother stamped property cards. Real estate was not a career she discovered. It was the dinner table vocabulary of her childhood. By the time she was 12, she could read a plat map. By 15, she was helping her mother file homestead exemption paperwork for a few dollars an hour after school. She enrolled at the College of Charleston in 1991 and graduated 4 years later with a degree in business administration and a minor in communications. Her senior yearbook quote, recovered later by a regional newspaper that had been more flattering to her in earlier years, read, "The best closer in the room is the one who never sweats." She took the South Carolina real estate salesperson exam 2 months after graduation and passed on the first attempt. Her first license was issued in October 1995. She was 22 years old. Her first 3 years in the industry, she worked as a buyer's agent for a regional franchise in West Ashley, splitting commissions 60-40 with a managing broker. The work was unglamorous. She showed starter homes to young couples relocating for jobs at the medical university and the naval shipyard. She drove a used Honda Accord. She earned $31,000 her first full year. Her annual evaluation that year described her as, quote, detail-oriented, persistent in follow-up, occasionally overpromising on closing timelines. In 1999, she earned her broker's license, which under South Carolina law allowed her to operate independently and to hold client funds in a brokerage trust account. She did not go independent immediately. She spent 6 more years at the franchise, learning the back-office machinery of escrow handling, contract addenda, builder relationships, and the slow rhythm of pre-construction sales in the Lowcountry. She married a marine insurance underwriter named Bradley Hatcher in 2002. They bought a 4-bedroom in Mount Pleasant. Her annual sales volume crossed $5 million for the first time in 2003. In 2006, she filed paperwork to open her own brokerage, Crowley Coastal Properties, with offices on Highway 17 in Mount Pleasant. She kept her maiden name on the masthead because, as she told a regional business journal that year, the name on the sign is the name on the contract. Bradley Hatcher signed a quitclaim on the Mount Pleasant house in 2009 when the marriage ended. She bought him out. The divorce was, by every account that survived, civil. They had no children. By 2014, Crowley Coastal Properties had 11 agents under its license. By 2017, she was the top-producing individual agent in the Summerfield and Mount Pleasant submarket, with annual personal sales volume of $23 million. In 2019, she crossed $40 million. Charleston Lowcountry Living magazine put her on the cover that fall, standing on the bow of a chartered yacht with the Ravenel Bridge behind her and the headline, "The Woman Who Sold the Boom." She was, by every public metric, what the industry calls a top producer. She had also, by then, been quietly looting her own trust account for 19 months. To understand what Daphne Crowley did, you have to understand the small piece of legal architecture she stood on top of. In South Carolina, when a buyer signs a contract to purchase a home that has not yet been built, the buyer is required to make an earnest money deposit. The deposit is held as collateral on the buyer's promise to close. For new construction, that deposit can be enormous. 5% of a $600,000 home is $30,000. 5% of a custom waterfront build is sometimes $200,000 or more. That money does not belong to the brokerage. It does not belong to the agent. It does not belong to the builder until specific conditions are met. By South Carolina law and by every standard of fiduciary practice, earnest money lives in a separate account called a real estate brokerage trust account. Trust accounts are tracked, reconciled monthly, and audited by the South Carolina Real Estate Commission. The commission requires a sworn reconciliation report. The signature on that report is the broker's. The broker, in this case, was Daphne Crowley. She was the sole signatory. The rule is older than the commission itself. A trust account is sacred because the entire transaction depends on the buyer believing the broker will not touch the money. There is no padlock on the account. There is no cosigner. There is no third party watching every withdrawal. The system is held together by a single assumption. The broker is honest. When the broker is honest, the system works for everyone. When the broker is not honest, the system has no internal mechanism to catch her until the math finally refuses to add up. 3 low-country developments fed most of her trust account. Riverwalk at Hanover, a 68-home subdivision east of Summerfield. Marsh Reach, a 42-home gated enclave on the Wando. And Palmetto Bluff Cottages, a 28-home boutique build near Cane Hoy. Buyers signed contracts 12 to 18 months before completion. They wired deposits to her trust account. They waited. They drove past their lot on weekends and took photographs of the slab pour. They imagined the kitchen. They sent her emails asking about counter samples and paint allowances. She answered every email cheerfully. Every email. The South Carolina Real Estate Commission requires brokers to submit monthly trust account reconciliations. The reconciliation is a one-page form. Bank balance on one line. Contractual liabilities on another. The 2 numbers must match. Crowley submitted that form, signed and dated, on the 8th business day of every month, for 73 consecutive months. Every single one of them was a lie. The first deposit she diverted was not large. It was $42,000 from a couple buying a 3-bedroom in Riverwalk at Hanover, wired into the trust account on April 14, 2018. 3 weeks later, she transferred $38,000 from the trust account to the brokerage operating account. The memo line read, "Marketing reimbursement." There was no marketing reimbursement due. She used the money to make a quarterly payment on the Range Rover lease and to pay a contractor's invoice for cedar shake repair on the boathouse behind her waterfront home. The couple at Riverwalk at Hanover closed 11 months later. Their deposit was credited at closing. The math worked because by then she had collected new deposits from 23 other buyers, and the operating account had been replenished from commissions on closed sales. No one noticed. No one checked. The state form she submitted in May 2018 showed the trust account balance matching the contractual liabilities to the dollar. It was the first falsified reconciliation. It was the easiest thing she had ever done. The second month, she diverted $91,000. The third month, $140,000. By the end of 2018, she had moved $387,000 out of the trust account and into the operating account, and from the operating account into a personal checking account she had opened at a separate bank in Mount Pleasant. The transfers were never the same amount twice. The memo lines were always plausible. Vendor reimbursement, agent commission advance, builder concession refund. The bank statements supported nothing and contradicted nothing because no one cross-referenced them against the underlying contracts. In 2019, she scaled the scheme. $640,000 in renovations to her waterfront home on the Wando flowed through invoices marked Builder Concession Reimbursement, a new boat dock with a covered slip and a hydraulic lift, a second-floor master suite addition, a custom kitchen with marble countertops imported from a quarry in Vermont. The contractors were paid out of the operating account. The operating account was refilled from the trust account. The trust account was refilled from the next pre-construction deposit. The structure was a Ponzi scheme in the technical sense. As long as new sales outpaced refund requests, the math closed itself. She took 3 vacations a year, a spring trip to St. Bart's, a summer week in Tuscany, a late fall booking in Vail. Her travel agent, interviewed by federal investigators later, remembered Crowley as, quote, "the easiest client I ever had. She never asked the price of anything." The travel agent also remembered that Crowley always paid in cash wire from her personal account, never from a credit card, and never with the brokerage name on the booking. In 73 consecutive months, she submitted 73 reconciliation reports. Everyone was forged. Everyone was signed. Everyone was filed with the South Carolina Real Estate Commission. The actual trust account balance and the reported balance diverged by a small margin in 2018, by a larger margin in 2019, by a chasm in 2021. By December 2022, the gap between the reported balance and the contractual liabilities exceeded $2 million. She continued to file. She continued to sign. She continued to wave to her neighbors on the Wando every morning when she walked her chocolate Labrador down the boardwalk to the dock. We are about to get into the part where it falls apart. Before we do, if this video has held your attention this far, that is because the story deserves to be told properly. Subscribe if you agree. We do this every single week, and the way this one ends in court is going to stick with you. The new construction market in the Lowcountry slowed in early 2023. Interest rates climbed. Buyers who had signed pre-construction contracts at 4% suddenly faced closing rates above 7%. Some buyers walked away. They forfeited deposits on principal, swallowing the loss because the new monthly payment was unaffordable. Other buyers asked for their deposits back, citing contingency clauses, builder delays, financing failures. For Daphne Crowley, every refund request was a withdrawal demand on a vault that was no longer there. She responded the only way the structure allowed her to respond. She stalled. She slow-walked. A buyer named Donald Eberhardt, whose contract on a Marsh Reach lot had fallen through in February 2023 due to a financing denial, requested return of his $87,000 earnest money in early March. Crowley acknowledged the request by email. She promised a check within 10 business days. The check did not come. He emailed again. She acknowledged again. She said the title company was processing the release. There was no title company processing the release. There was no check to send. Eberhardt called the office. He left voicemails. He left them every Tuesday for 13 consecutive Tuesdays. He drove to the Crowley Coastal Properties office on Highway 17 and sat in the lobby for 40 minutes before a junior agent gently told him that Daphne was, quote, in showings all day. He drove home. He filed a complaint with the South Carolina Real Estate Commission on June 11th, 2024. The complaint was 3 pages long. It was typed. It included a chronological log of every call, every email, and every promise. 3 other buyers filed within the next 4 weeks. Each complaint named Crowley Coastal Properties. Each cited specific dollar amounts. Each described the same pattern of delayed correspondence and broken promises. The commission opened a file. The commission requested a copy of the most recent trust account reconciliation and a current bank statement. Crowley sent the reconciliation. The reconciliation showed a balance of $3,140,000 matching the contractual liabilities. She did not send the bank statement. She asked for a 2-week extension. The commission granted it. In those 2 weeks, she made phone calls. She called 2 builders and asked if they could release deposits early on properties that were almost finished. They could not. She called a private lender she had used twice before for short-term commercial bridges. The lender quoted her at 16% and required collateral she could not produce. She called an attorney. The attorney told her to stop calling and to retain criminal counsel immediately. She did not retain criminal counsel. She refreshed her email inbox instead. The 2 weeks expired. The commission requested the bank statement again. She delayed 3 more days. On August 6, 2024, she emailed a PDF of the actual bank statement, hoping somehow that the discrepancy would be lost in the volume. The current balance line on that statement read $4,200. The contractual liabilities she had reported the prior month were $3.1 million. The auditor at the commission opened the PDF, scrolled to the balance line, and forwarded the file within 90 minutes to the Office of the South Carolina Attorney General. The state referral to the South Carolina Attorney General triggered a parallel federal review the same week. Interstate wire transactions and FDIC-insured banking activity placed the conduct squarely within federal jurisdiction. An FBI field agent named Caroline Tessier, working out of the Charleston resident agency, pulled subpoenas on 3 banking institutions within 48 hours. The brokerage trust account at Bank of South Carolina, the operating account at Coastal Federal, a personal checking account in Crowley's name at South State. The subpoenas produced 11 years of bank records. Investigators cross-referenced them against the contracts on file at the brokerage, against the falsified reconciliation reports submitted to the commission, and against the closing statements for every transaction Crowley had touched since 2018. The picture that assembled itself was systematic and granular. 42 buyers, $6.1 million. A pattern of diversions that began modestly and grew arithmetically until it became geometric. They also found something the bank records alone would not have surfaced. In 7 cases between 2022 and 2024, when buyers had requested deposit refunds and Crowley could not pay them, she had executed contract extension addenda that purported to release the earnest money to the builder. The buyer signatures on those addenda did not match the buyer signatures on the original contracts. Forensic document examiners flagged all 7 within a week of the warrant return. The signatures were not even good forgeries. They were quick. They were the work of someone who assumed no one would ever look. On August 22, 2024, federal agents executed warrants at 3 locations: the Crowley Coastal Properties Office on Highway 17, the waterfront home on the Wando River, and, separately, at the 3 banks holding the relevant accounts. At the brokerage office, they recovered 73 months of falsified reconciliation reports, neatly tabbed in a 3-ring binder labeled, in her own hand, Compliance. They recovered the original deposit slips that contradicted those reports. They recovered the binder of forged contract extension addenda. At the home office, they recovered a desktop computer she had not bothered to password protect. On the desktop, in a folder named simply Business, they found an Excel file titled true_balance.xlsx. The file had been last modified 3 days before the warrant was executed. The file had 2 columns: buyer name, amount owed, 42 rows. The bottom cell, in red font, italicized, underlined, contained a single number, minus $6,114,200. She had been maintaining the real ledger alongside the falsified one. The dishonest ledger was the one she filed with the state. The honest one she kept on her own computer, updated week by week, sometimes day by day. She knew exactly what she owed. She knew exactly to whom. She had simply hoped, for 73 consecutive months, that no one would ever ask her to prove it. The warrant team arrived at the Wando River house at 6:45 on a Thursday morning. Crowley answered the door in a silk robe, holding the chocolate Labrador by the collar. Agent Tessier identified herself and presented the warrant. Crowley read the cover sheet. She did not protest. She did not ask the team to come back later. She asked, instead, if she could put the dog in the laundry room. Tessier said yes. The agent who followed her down the hallway noted that Crowley walked past the home office without slowing, without glancing at the desktop computer, without locking the door. The computer was still on. The Excel file was still open. At the kitchen table, with the team working through her file cabinets in the next room, Agent Tessier asked her if she would like to make a voluntary statement. She declined. Tessier asked her if she understood the warrant. She said yes. Tessier asked her if she wanted to call an attorney. She said yes. Then, before reaching for the phone, she looked at the agent and said, quietly, "The file on the computer in the office is mine. You will find what you are looking for there. I would prefer that no one else open it before you do," Tessier asked. "Are you referring to a specific file, ma'am?" Crowley said. "The spreadsheet, the one with the names." Tessier asked, "Is that an admission?" Crowley said, "It is a request. I would like to call my attorney now." She did not say anything else. She made her phone call. She sat at the kitchen table while the team worked. She watched the agents tag and remove the desktop computer, the binder labeled compliance, the original deposit slips, the 7 forged addenda. She did not cry. She did not argue. At one point, she asked an agent if she could feed the dog. The agent said yes. At 9:15, she was placed under arrest. She was wearing the same silk robe. They allowed her to change into slacks and a sweater. They escorted her to a federal vehicle in the driveway. The Range Rover with the Soldeat plate sat in the carport behind it, recently washed, the registration still current. She looked at it once on the way to the car, then she looked away. A federal grand jury in the District of South Carolina returned a sealed indictment on September 4th, 2024. The indictment ran 47 counts, 31 counts of wire fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1343, 9 counts of bank fraud under Section 1344, 7 counts of aggravated identity theft under Section 102(8)(a), 1 for each forged buyer signature, and the umbrella charge under Section 1956, money laundering, capturing the flow of stolen deposit funds through the operating account and into her personal lifestyle. South Carolina state charges followed, including breach of trust with fraudulent intent, real estate license law violations, and forgery. Her defense attorney was a Columbia-based white-collar specialist named Wesley Pritchard, who had represented physicians and small business owners through similar federal exposure. Pritchard reviewed the discovery. He read the indictment. He saw the spreadsheet titled True_Balance.XLSX with its final sell of -$6,114,200. He advised his client that trial was not a viable strategy. The plea negotiations began in October. They concluded in mid-December. On December 17, 2024, in Courtroom 3 of the United States District Court for the District of South Carolina in Charleston, Daphne Lorraine Crowley pleaded guilty to wire fraud, bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering pursuant to a written plea agreement. The agreement contemplated a recommended sentencing range of 97 to 121 months on the fraud counts, plus the mandatory consecutive 2 years on the aggravated identity theft. Restitution of $6,114,000 was ordered. Her South Carolina real estate license was permanently revoked. At the change of plea hearing, the judge asked her if she understood the charges. She said yes. The judge asked her if she had committed the conduct described in the indictment. She said yes. The judge asked her if she had anything she wished to say. She said, "I want the buyers to know that I knew their names. I am sorry." That was the entire allocution. It was 41 words. Sentencing was scheduled for April 2025. At the sentencing hearing, the courtroom was full. 18 of the 42 named victims attended in person. 5 gave victim impact statements. A retired naval architect named Margaret Cobb described losing $165,000 she had set aside for the home she had planned to die in. A young couple from Mount Pleasant, expecting their first child, described the closing date they had circled on a calendar that never arrived. Donald Eberhardt, the buyer whose complaint had started the unraveling, said only one sentence. "I called her every Tuesday for 13 weeks. She knew my voice. She still did not pick up." The judge, in delivering the sentence, addressed Crowley directly. The court said, "This case is not about a market downturn. It is not about pressure. It is not about a single bad decision compounded by panic. You maintained 2 ledgers for 73 months. The dishonest ledger you submitted to the state. The honest one you kept for yourself. You did this because you wanted the lifestyle that the money you held in trust could buy you, and you assumed that the next deposit would forever cover the last one. That is not panic. That is a plan. The court imposed 121 months on the fraud counts, the top of the recommended range. 24 months consecutive on the aggravated identity theft. A total of 145 months in federal custody. 12 years and 1 month. Restitution of $6,114,000. 3 years of supervised release. Designation to Federal Prison Camp Alderson in West Virginia, the minimum security facility for non-violent female offenders. Self-surrender ordered for June 2025. The Wando River House was sold at auction in May. The Range Rover with the Sold It plate was repossessed in February and resold at a dealer auction in Charleston for $41,000. The brokerage office on Highway 17 was vacated in March. The framed magazine covers were taken down. The trust account was closed. The 42 buyers received pennies on the dollar from the bankruptcy estate. Donald Eberhardt received $4,180 on his $87,000 claim. He framed the check stub and hung it in his garage. This case was devastating, but the case waiting for you on the right-hand side of your screen right now is on a completely different level. Click it.